The history of Christmas. Ah, the traditional Christmas. Family and friends gathered round the fire, exchanging gifts, getting drunk on mead, upturning the established social order, threatening violence to party poopers, and children waiting in terror for a Yuletide whipping. Not quite what you had in mind? The history of the midwinter holiday we now call Christmas is much longer and much spookier than you might think. Today, we consider Halloween to be the one true haunted holiday. It began as a celebration of the end of harvest at a time when the amount of food that was stockpiled for the winter had life and death consequences. People faced the coming winter with trepidation and naturally reflected on their mortality at this time of year. So they honored their dead and invented customs designed to ward off the dark and dangerous specters of death. If Halloween marked the beginning of the deadliest time of year, an even more dreadful time occurred 2 months later at the end of December in the heart of winter, when scant sunlight gave way to long, dark, malignant nights. At the winter solstice, the longest night of the year, ancient Germanic and Nordic people celebrated the festival of Yule, which involved a variety of spooky rituals over the course of several days. Their chief god, the one-eyed Odin, was called Julnir, or the Master of Yule. He was said to ride through the night sky on an 8-legged horse named Sleipnir. He leads the wild hunt, a horde of elves, fairies, and spirits of the dead, riding black horses, blowing horns, and accompanied by black dogs. His band of ghostly warriors gallop forth from the halls of Valhalla in mad pursuit, hunting out their enemies to tear them to shreds and calling forth the spirits of deceased loved ones and any limbs they lost on the battlefield. Amid the madness, Odin would judge the souls of the living, deciding who was good and who evil. This nocturnal escapade blessed the land for a fruitful harvest in the coming year, but you didn't want to be caught out of doors when Odin's spectral horde rode past. Witnessing the wild hunt was a terrible omen of famine, plague, and war, or at the very least the observer would be dragged off to the underworld. This horrifying specter is the origin of jolly old St. Nick's nighttime ride to deliver presents. Odin, a white-bearded man, is accompanied by elves and rides an 8-legged horse, and Santa is pulled by 8 reindeer. Just as Odin sat in judgment over souls, Santa gives the good children presents and bad children coal, or worse. Ancient people gathered together at Yuletime to feast for several nights. They drank ale and made toasts, first to Odin, then to Njord, god of wind and sea, and his son Freyr, god of the harvest and virility. Then to the king, and finally toasts were drunk to the memory of departed kin. During the feast, livestock were sacrificed and their blood collected in a sacred vessel. The crimson gore was smeared on the altars of the gods and the walls of the temple, and all men present were sprinkled with blood. The sacrificial animals would then be boiled as food for the feast. One special night of the festive season, called Moldranat, or Mother's Night, was reserved for the worship of goddesses, including Frigg and Freya, as well as female ancestral spirits. Sacrifices were made for the fertility of the people and the land. This night later became Christmas Eve and was focused around the Virgin Mary. Let's travel from the frigid cold of Northern Europe to a much balmier ancient Rome, where the festival of Saturnalia was in full swing from December 17th to 23rd. The celebration honored Saturn, the god of the sun, and was observed at the winter solstice to honor his death and rebirth. Hey, that kind of sounds like Jesus. Animal sacrifices were made at the temple of Saturn, followed by feasting and masquerade carnivals. Gifts were exchanged, usually gag gifts or small figurines called sigillaria. Social norms were overturned, gambling was permitted, and masters provided table servants to their slaves. A beggar or fool would be elected the king of Saturnalia, and would dress in the guise of Saturn to preside over the feast. At the end of the festival, the king of Saturnalia would be sacrificed. As Christianity infiltrated Europe, the Church found it impossible to wipe out the observance of these popular midwinter festivals. So, as they would later consecrate Samhain into Halloween, they transformed Saturnalia into Christ's Mass, or Christmas, to honor the birth of Jesus Christ. The Bible never mentions Jesus' birth date, though biblical scholars think it likely that he was actually born in September, which means that he would have been conceived in December. But early church leaders in Rome likened Jesus to the sun god Saturn, so making Jesus' birth the same as Saturn's made sense. Back up north in Norway, King Haakon I Christianized the nation in the 10th century. His priests and missionaries baptized the pagan chieftains and condemned the offering of sacrifices to the gods. So the people replaced animal offerings with the burning of a Yule goat, the form of an animal fashioned out of straw. Yule goats are popular Christmas decorations in Scandinavia today and often decorate Christmas trees and town centers. In the town of Gavle, Sweden, a giant Yule goat has been erected every December since 1966, and despite mounting security measures, the goat has been damaged or burned down 37 times out of 52 by the townspeople. Now that's the Yule spirit. The Yule log also became substitute for sacrifice. Celebrants would go to the forest, cut down the largest tree they could find, and drag it into the center of town. Then it would be set ablaze, and as long as the fire burned, feasting and celebration would commence. A part of the log was always spared the flames so that it could light the next year's fire. The saved fragment of Yule log was said to possess magic powers to cure numerous maladies, including frostbite, toothache, mildew, lightning, house fires, and hail. The tradition of the Yule log spread and became the most popular symbol of Christmas in early modern Europe. It took on local flavor in different regions, including in the Catalan region of northern Spain, where the log wears a floppy red hat and a smiling face. Children feed the log nuts and dried fruit, and in return, the Yule log poops out their presents. Christmas was solidified as an important Christian holiday when Charlemagne was crowned emperor on Christmas Day in 800. In 1066, William the Conqueror was also crowned King of England on Christmas Day. In the houses of the medieval English and French nobility, the traditional centerpiece of the Christmas meal was not poultry but a boar's head, decorated with garlands of rosemary and holly and eaten with mustard sauce. The disembodied head would be presented while celebrants sang a traditional Christmas carol. One French recipe advises placing camphor-dipped candles in the beast's mouth so that it would appear to breathe fire. At Queen's College, Oxford, this tradition lives on today. People decorated their homes and great halls with holly and evergreens, plants that would always survive the harsh winter. On the 12th night of the Christmas holiday, bands of peasants would go wassailing. Similar to trick-or-treating, the rowdy, tipsy company would visit the houses of the wealthy and sing songs offering a drink of hot mulled cider from the wassail bowl in exchange for gifts, food, and drink. Wassail is an Anglo-Saxon term meaning be thou hail or be in good health, and the obliging homeowner was meant to answer drink hail or drink and be healthy, and cough up the good liquor. The inhospitable homeowner would often find his house vandalized by the jolly mob. In cider-producing counties in the southwest of England, wassailing involved a procession to the orchard, where villagers sang and danced around the trees and asked the gods for a good harvest in the coming year. Pieces of toast soaked in wassail are hung from the bare winter branches to attract robins who represent the good spirits of the trees. In southern Wales, their wassailing tradition is called Mari Lwyd and involves the celebrants parading with the skull of a horse decorated and mounted on a pole draped with white cloth. I don't think I'd want to see that looking in my window on a cold winter's night. These wassailing traditions continue in many communities today. Christmas time in the Middle Ages was a raucous party, complete with masquerading, theater, plenty of wassail to drink, and the Feast of Fools. The descendant of the Roman feast of Saturnalia, the Feast of Fools became popular in France and Britain. Like Saturnalia, social roles were reversed, and a peasant or fool was appointed Lord of Misrule to preside over the festivities. Some areas selected a boy bishop instead. Scotland had an abbot of unreason, and France a prince de sots. Revelers at the Feast of Fools were masked and costumed and had plenty of rowdy good time. The church had a real problem with this blasphemous bash, particularly the idea of upsetting the established social order, and the Christmas festivities were often suppressed. When Puritan Oliver Cromwell executed King Charles I and became Lord Protector of England in 1653, he banned all Christmas celebrations outright. The Puritans despised many jolly things, including drinking, theater, and playing games and sports. They wanted to keep everyone on the straight, narrow, and mind-numbingly boring path to righteousness. Catholics and others who preferred the happiness of Christmas to the dour lifestyle of the Puritans used an ancient folk character, Father Christmas, as a symbol of the good old days. The Puritans who crossed the Atlantic to found the American colonies were cut from the same stiff, scratchy cloth as their English counterparts. They also banned Christmas and fined or pilloried anyone caught exhibiting the holiday spirit. Their thinking was that life should adhere strictly to the word of the Bible, and as Christmas is based on ancient pagan celebrations and has no biblical base, it really isn't Christian at all. The more relaxed Protestants in 16th century Germany still valued Christmas. They enjoyed bringing an evergreen tree into the church and home. This was based on the ancient tradition of pagan tree worship. Pines and other conifers were chosen as they remain green and lush in the dead of winter. The tree was Christianized as the paradise tree, from which Adam and Eve partook the fruit of knowledge, and was decorated with red apples, which were later replaced by glass ornaments. The founder of the Protestant faith, Martin Luther, was said to have been the first to add lighted candles to the Christmas tree. When Oliver Cromwell died and the English re-established the monarchy under Charles II, Christmas was once again allowed, but was never as popular as it had been in the Middle Ages. That is until German monarchs brought their love of the holiday to Britain. King George III's German wife, Queen Charlotte, threw a party for children in 1800 at which a Christmas tree was the centerpiece. Queen Victoria, whose mother was German, had grown up with a Tannenbaum. An illustration of Victoria, her German husband Prince Albert, and their 9 children gathered around a decorated pine tree spread the cheerful tableau around the nation and made Christmas trees a staple of the holiday in England. The growing middle class that resulted from the Industrial Revolution made Christmas a more child-centric holiday involving gifts and toys and visits from Father Christmas. The English took to the Christmas tree with gusto and trimmed their trees with witch balls, blown glass baubles which were originally used as fishing floats. They became associated with witches in the 17th century when witch trials in England were at their height. Suspected sorceresses would be tried by throwing them into water. If they were guilty, their bodies would reject this second baptism and they would float, just like witch balls. In the 17th and 18th century, witch balls were popular household decorations, often hung in windows and sometimes filled with herbs to ward off witches and other evil spirits. So they were a handy decoration when the Christmas tree first came into the home. Europe has many legends about nocturnal gift givers at Christmas time, probably springing from the wild hunt of Odin. Some, like Sinterklaas and Christkind, are benevolent, but many are downright terrifying. Iceland's Yule lads play pranks on families. The Netherlands' Zwart Piet is a racial stereotype who stuffs naughty children into a sack and drags them back to Spain for punishment. Germany's Belschnickel whips naughty children who are unable to recite their prayers or solve math equations. And Krampus is a straight-up demon who terrorizes and whips naughty children in the Alpine region. You can get a more in-depth look at all of these legends in this video. Parents have long been using Christmas gift givers as a way to reward nice behavior and threaten punishment for naughtiness. The most recent incarnation is the elf on the shelf, who is said to be vigilantly watching children and reporting any unpleasant antics back to Santa Claus. This creepy, Big Brother-style monitoring is bound to make you a little paranoid. With the winter wind howling outside, Christmas celebrants have long gathered by the fire to frighten each other with ghost stories. Phantom tales have been a central part of the winter holiday since the myth of Odin's wild hunt in ancient times. Jerome K. Jerome wrote in 1891, "Nothing satisfies us on Christmas Eve but to hear each other tell authentic anecdotes about specters. It is a genial and festive season, and we love to muse upon graves and dead bodies and murder and blood." In 1843, Charles Dickens wrote the most famous Christmas story of them all, A Christmas Carol, which is also a chilling ghost story. Miserly Ebenezer Scrooge is confronted by the tortured soul of his deceased colleague, as well as the ghosts of Christmas past, present, and yet to come, and they terrify him into changing his ways for the better. The fabulous tradition of horrifying your friends and family with ghost stories on Christmas Eve seems to have been partly forgotten in the dazzling sparkle of the Hallmark holiday. But there is still plenty of modern Christmas horror fare for the stout of heart. Check out this video of my top 12 scary Christmas movies. Though condemned as a decadent and sinful holiday by early European settlers in America, Christmas eventually gained popularity in the U.S. thanks to immigrants bringing their various holiday customs to the melting pot nation. New Yorker Washington Irving, author of The Legend of Sleepy Hollow, wrote several popular stories with Yuletide themes. December 25th was declared a national holiday in 1870, and Christmas has been an integral part of American culture ever since. Americans put aside drunken revelries with a strong whiff of paganism and child-punishing nocturnal home invaders for a more wholesome, family-oriented celebration of gift-giving and happily ever after. But there is one modern American Christmas tradition that is totally brutal: Black Friday. This 21st century invention of door-busting sales on Christmas gifts, held the day after Thanksgiving, encourages thousands of shoppers to line up before dawn and push aside fellow shoppers and their humanity in order to be the first to get their paws on that shiny new thing. Since 2006, Black Friday sales have resulted in 117 injuries and 12 deaths. Some might say the mass commercialism of the holiday season is the scariest thing of all. If you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, comment your thoughts, and check out my other royal history videos. If you really want to help, please consider supporting me on Patreon. A link is in the description. Thank you for watching.